This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Ash, Christopher Mitchell and 212th Trooper, and brought to you by Christopher Mitchell, who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member and select the Pickled Producer tier, since among other benefits, this will guarantee that your video is made, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Also, while I have you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel since it costs you nothing and tells YouTube that you like what I do. But with that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Our story begins where Primeape's canonical story ended, during the climax of the Punchy Pokemon. Following an intense bout with Hitmonlee, Ash and Primeape have at last proven themselves to be the very best like no one ever was, at least in this specific competition, and as their eyes meet, the pair feel immense fondness for each other, as well as a burning desire to keep working together to rise higher and higher. Like in canon, it is at this point that Anthony approaches Ash and offers to train Primeape into a true P1 champion, a strange request considering it is already a P1 champion, and the Pokemon Anthony has trained has never actually won the Grand Prix, despite him deserting his family to devote everything he has to training it, with this being the central conflict of the episode. But putting that aside, here Ash does something he did not do in canon, and asks Primeape what it wants. Looking its trainer in the eye, the pig monkey reflects on how far they've come today, both in terms of achievement and their bond, and recognizing that no amount of specialized training is worth giving that up, it snuffles once and shakes its head. Shrugging that he gotta respect a fighter's loyalty, Anthony wishes Ash and Primeape all the best on their travels. Then, as he starts heading home with his daughter for a long overdue reunion, Ash and his friends press onwards towards their next destination, and more adventure. Unfortunately, Primeape's adventure will not begin for a while, as there isn't much for it to do over the next few episodes, either due to lack of battles, or because in the instances where there are battles, Ash is more likely to bring out the Pokemon he did in canon, such as Squirtle to face off against the Diglett infestation. Additionally, Ash has not yet tumbled to the idea of actually training his Pokemon, meaning Primeape is left to stagnate somewhat, a fact which annoys the piggish pugilist to no end, as even if it has come to respect Ash as its friend and trainer, it still has the wild impulse to fight and grow stronger by proving itself against others. Fortunately, such an opportunity will present itself, though not in the manner anyone expected, as the rival who will test it more than any other turns out to be Ash's newly evolved Charmeleon. Since evolving, the fire lizard has developed a bad attitude, being disrespectful and disobedient towards Ash, having deemed him not worth listening to. While the boy is naturally dispirited by this, he is not going to give up on his friend, and better still, he has something he didn't have in the main timeline. Primeape has proved that even if a Pokemon doesn't respect him now, that doesn't mean they can't be won over with hard work and trust. To this end, when the gang stop for meals or to make camp, Ash does his best to pair Charmeleon and Primeape up, hoping maybe the fighting type can share its reasons for coming around to Ash, so that Charmeleon can return to him as well. Unfortunately, rather than mending bridges, this tactic instead burns them, as having become incredibly loyal to Ash after he saved it from injury when it was tossed out of the ring in the P1 Grand Prix, Primeape doesn't like the lizard's snide comments about their trainer being too weak to care about, as while it gets wanting to be stronger, it also knows the only way to do this is with the help of friends. This stands in direct contrast to Charmeleon's ideology that strength is the only thing that matters, and that can only be gained through the solitary pursuit of power, and by dominating strong foes. Despite not being the fire type in this relationship, this causes Primeape to flare up, as it orders Charmeleon to put its money where its mouth is and fight it then. Though yawning and waving a claw dismissively, the flame Pokemon growls that the pig monkey isn't worth the effort. It, which is to say Charmeleon, already beat the fighting type when they first met, and that was when it was just a puny little Charmander, so now that it's Charmeleon, they're not even in the same league. Naturally, this incenses the fighting type who attempts to rush its rival, though having the benefit of a long-range flamethrower which is capable of halting an entire army of Executor, Primeape sadly does not even get close before it is sent crashing to the ground as a ball of charred fur, while the fire type coldly asserts that this is what it meant. Primeape is weak. Weak. Weak! This word rings in the pig monkey's ears long after Charmeleon has left, lighting a fire out hotter than the embers that still smolder on the ends of its fur. It will show that brat who is weak, and it will do so while never stooping to its selfish level. To this end, Primeape begins its own training, even if it's just honing its fists by punching trees and rocks, or while simulating sitting under a waterfall by having Squirtle blast it from above with its strongest water gun. Not only that, but it also begins investing more time in its teammates as well as any friends they meet along the way, with this being most obvious when they reach Moss Green Village and meet a girl named Cassandra who needs help evolving her timid Paris. Figuring it just needs some battle experience, Ash agrees to throw a series of practice matches with Pikachu and Primeape being his go-to Pokemon for this task. Unfortunately, even Pikachu's weakest Thundershock puts spirals in the bug grass type's eyes, though thankfully, Primeape is here to help, and by help, it means toughen the little orange coward up through much screaming and intimidating glaring, as while it has developed loyalty, it is still the same berserker ape it ever was. Surprisingly, Paris actually responds well to crisis, as when its fight-or-flight instincts kick in, it fights, ramming a claw painfully into Primeape's belly and incapacitating it. This genuine victory against such a seemingly terrifying opponent does wonders for Paris' self-confidence, so that in an instant, it is consumed in white light and becomes the parasect its trainer needs. From the ground, Primeape looks on proudly, as this is just further proof that its ideology is correct. Strength is gained through teamwork, and that idiot lizard doesn't know what it's talking about. However, this celebration may be premature, as not long after this, Charmeleon does achieve a new level of strength all on its own, as its ego drives it to evolve into a Charizard so that it can crush an Aerodactyl in Grandpa Canyon. This new leap in power, not to mention the super effective flying typing that comes with it, only widens the gap in power between itself and Primeape, a fact the pugilist is quite aware of, even as it challenges Charizard to battle once again. And once again, it loses, as it is blasted with Flamethrower, this time from above, as Charizard takes flight beyond its reach in what is surely meant as an insult to add to injury. Nonetheless, Primeape does not stop, with a few of the gang's other more proactive team members like Bulbasaur and Geodude joining in for occasional spars, with this helping them all to grow and also develop an unlikely friendship, as Bulbasaur and Geodude are both usually quite stoic while Primeape is an explosive personality, though all three are united by their fighting spirit and the value they place on loyalty. Due to this latter point, when Bulbasaur is abducted by Wild Bulbasaur so that it can undergo forced evolution at the mysterious garden, Primeape accompanies Pikachu in a vain attempt to rescue its friend, charging onwards even after Pikachu turns back to get Ash, and only stopping when it loses sight of the kidnappers. Nonetheless, it continues searching for as long as it is able, angrily punching down trees and screaming for Bulbasaur until Ash and his friends arrive and use the pollen trail to reach the garden. Seeing Bulbasaur being assaulted by the garden's leader, a despotic Venusaur, Primeape finds itself apoplectic with rage, though when it screeches out a challenge for the big ugly toad to come fight something closer to its own size, it is Bulbasaur who barks out a refusal, as this is a matter of personal pride, so while it is grateful for its friend's support, it also needs Primeape's trust that it can handle this. Seeing this is just further proof of the warrior spirit they share, the pig monkey acquiesces, bellowing support for Bulbasaur as it continues to resist evolution, and watching as it manifests its determination as a new move, Solar Beam, which it promptly uses to defeat the newly arrived and unwelcome Team Rocket and save the mysterious garden. This thankfully is enough to earn the respect of the other grass types, meaning Bulbasaur and its friends can leave in peace, though this does not mean the starter is free to rest on its laurels, as when the next opportunity for training arises, Primeape comes to it and requests that it teach it how to perform a solar beam like the one it used to take down Team Rocket's balloon, since a beam attack might just be what it needs to settle its rivalry with Charizard. As a fist fighter, manifesting energy attacks does not come naturally to Primeape, though this does not mean it does not try, watching what Bulbasaur does and trying to simulate it. Even Pikachu and Squirtle help out in this endeavour, with them demonstrating Thunderbolt and Water Gun respectively, though even still there is little progress. The best Primeape is able to achieve is briefly manifesting a small orb of energy between its mitten-like hands, which when fired hastily peters out. However, trading is not the only thing Primeape has to concern itself with, as at long last Ash plans to use it in a gym battle, bringing it out as his third Pokemon against Blaine. For the most part, this battle has gone the same as canon up until this point, with Squirtle losing to Ninetales, prompting Ash to bring in Charizard, and Blaine to swap to Rhydon. However, Charizard had refused to fight the ground rock type, instead flying away and forcing Ash to call in the pig monkey Pokemon, as he trusts the fighting type's gutsy nature to carry him through this disadvantageous situation. Eager to prove itself, Primeape immediately goes on the attack with a fearsome Mega Kick, which despite being resisted forces the bipedal Rhino to grunt with pain as it's pushed back, in a testament to Primeape's sheer strength. However, refusing to take this lying down, Rhydon then attempts to run Primeape through with a flurry of fury attacks, as it jabs the pig monkey with its horn, forcing it to scamper backwards, while darting out with its paws to bat away the horn every time it gets close. Then, as the multi-strike move ends, Primeape lashes out with another Mega Kick, this time to the chin that sends its rocky foe reeling. Wanting to maintain this momentum, Ash next calls for a Seismic Toss, and demonstrating the move that won at the P1 Grand Prix, Primeape leaps up and grabs Rhydon by the horn before pulling it into the air with it. From the sidelines, Brock and Misty cheer for the pig monkey, while even Charizard deigns to look up from its nap in response to this climactic attack, showing its incredible physical prowess. Primeape lifts Rhydon, who weighs almost 4 times as much as it over its head, then tosses it down to the rocky battlefield, where it is rendered unconscious by the super effective move. Touching down, Primeape snorts menacingly, daring Blaine to bring on any Pokemon he has left, as it will crush them all, though when Blaine reveals his final choice to be none other than his Magmar, who emerges from the depths of the volcano itself, Charizard swoops back onto the field and attempts to shove the feisty furball aside, as it wants to fight its fellow fire type. Unfortunately for the flame Pokemon, Primeape isn't budging, snarling that it gave up its shot when it flew away, so now it's just got to sit back and watch the fireworks. An answer Charizard plainly dislikes, as it attempts to barbecue its teammate with an errant flamethrower. Never want to simply take such an insult, especially not from its rival. Primeape responds to this with a sidekick to Charizard's corpulent belly that makes it bellow and ready its claws, since if that's the way it's going to be, it'll happily start its warm-up by beating the fighting type to a pulp. However, it seems this long overdue rematch is not to be, as figuring they can get their hands on 3 Primo Pokemon, Team Rocket decide to bust in earlier than in canon and begin laying down a volley of shots with their ice bazookas. Having been primed for battle, Primeape, Charizard and Magmar are all able to avoid these shots, but the same cannot be said for the walls, which due to the impact of these blasts as well as the rapid cooling quickly begin to crumble, triggering an imminent eruption. Recognizing this will mean the end for them as well as the island if they don't stop this, Ash, Brock, Misty, Blaine and all their Pokemon begin working together to fill the lava chasm with rocks, in the hope of creating a plug that might prevent the eruption. Even Charizard and Primeape are able to put their feud aside for the time being, since as Ash's 2 physically strongest Pokemon, it's up to them to do the lion's share of the rock carrying, often passing off to one another as part of a chain. Together, the team are able to avert calamity, with Ash being quick to thank both his heavy hitters and grin that he knew they could get along if they tried, though this just earns him a huff from both as they turn their backs on each other and cross their arms defiantly. Unfortunately, as part of sealing the breach, Blaine's battlefield was lost to the lava, meaning this final match against Magmar must be conducted on top of the volcano. As both are eager to fight, Charizard and Primeape stand on either side of their trainer as he ascends to the mountain's mouth. Then as Blaine questions Ash on which Pokemon he's going to use, he looks to Charizard and states that while he's grateful for its help, this match is Primeape's fair and square. Naturally, this earns the boy a blast of flamethrower to the face. Though seemingly satisfied with his petty revenge, Charizard watches as Primeape leaps onto one of the small rocky spires that bridge the pit, while Magmar does the same without preamble. Taking the first move, Ash instructs Primeape to go on the offensive with a series of mega kicks, an order the Pigmonkey is happy to obey, that hops from spire to spire before ramming a foot into Magmar's gut. Nonetheless, the Fire Duck shows little reaction to this, its expression remaining vacant, as it retaliates with a fire punch that connects with Primeape's jaw, and leaves a char mark along the breadth of its face. Turning the pain of this into anger, the fighting type attempts to follow up with a second kick, though this is just what Blaine wants as he has Magmar lunge into the foot with a Skull Bash. At once, Primeape is sent completely off balance, and as it tumbles backwards and off its small foothold, it has to reach out and grab the edge of its spire with one hand to avoid becoming a pancake at the bottom of the now plugged up volcano. Seeing the helpless position its opponent is in, the Spitfire Pokemon then attempts to finish things off with a flamethrower. Though reacting before Ash can give a command, Primeape thrusts out its free hand and attempts to fire its imperfect blast attack at the flames. As with all previous attempts, this dissipates long before it can reach Magmar, though it does hold the flamethrower at bay just long enough that the fist fighter can draw on its simian instincts to swing from its pillar and onto another, and scramble back to its feet. Curiously, Misty asks Ash what that move was, though shrugging, the boy admits that he has no idea, though figuring Dextermite, he pulls out the device and points it at Primeape. Helpfully, the Pokédex explains that this is Hyper Beam, and grinning that the Pigmonkey is awesome for learning this new move, Ash tells it to do that again. Nodding fiercely, Primeape cups its 2 paws and brings them together with an orb of faint orange light forming between them. Then, as it cries out its name and thrusts its arms outwards, the orb becomes a beam that soars right at Magmar. Calmly, Blaine instructs his fire type to match this with Flamethrower, and unfortunately for Ash and Primeape, like last time, Hyper Beam cannot break through, forcing the fighting type to leap onto another platform, as it is engulfed in flame. Grinning his teeth now, the boy from Pallet Town instructs his friend to go back to Mega Kick, with this being something Primeape can do, as it jumps up high, then brings its large flat foot down on Magmar's face, sending it tumbling out of sight. However, this absence is short-lived, as before Ash and Primeape can celebrate, Magmar has reappeared, mimicking its foe and launching itself high into the air, though, unlike Primeape, it does not intend to use the drop to empower a physical move, instead manifesting a great flaming kanji, which it directs down at the Pigmonkey with a grunt. Worriedly, Brock announced that this is Fire Blast, one of the most powerful fire-type moves, and knowing nothing else in their arsenal can handle this, Ash calls for Hyper Beam. The risk of such a gambit is not lost on anyone, as Misty shields her eyes and Brock frowns, though curiously, Blaine asks what Ash's game is. However, smiling confidently, Ash replies that there's no game, he just has complete and total faith in his friend Primeape. On the battlefield, these words serve as a stimulant to the fighting type, as planting its feet, it begins channeling everything it has into the energy sphere in its hands. Its drive to be stronger, its passion for fighting, its loyalty for Ash, all roll together into a single ball. Then, without a sound, it fires. At once it is clear that this Hyper Beam is different, stronger, forming a larger blast and having a denser colour. This is the pure unfiltered power of Primeape, and as it strikes the Fire Blast, the massive flames are instantly extinguished, leaving nothing in its path, as it continues rising and consumes Magmar. Even before the burst of orange light fades, everyone knows the battle is over. And as Magmar collapses to the ground with spirals in its eyes, Ash leaps across the volcanic pillar to embrace Primeape, who slumps against him with a huff, having clearly been exhausted from this all-out attack. Nonetheless, Ash is incredibly proud of his fighting-type friend, telling it as much while Brock, Misty, and Pikachu all cheer their congratulations, and even Charizard gives the smallest of nods, in a gesture of begrudging respect. However, this does not mean the end of their rivalry. Far from it. As having accepted that Primeape is not a weakling after all, Charizard is more determined than ever to prove that its method of strength is superior. To this end, the very moment the heroes set up camp back on the mainland, Primeape and Charizard are squaring off for their rematch. Like last time, Charizard wastes no time in taking to the air, as this eliminates most of its opponent's options, though, having trained for this very scenario, Primeape readies a now mastered Hyper Beam. Spotting this, the Fire Dragon attempts to respond in kind with a ranged move of its own, that being its now signature Flamethrower, seeing it belch a torrent of flames down at the pig monkey as it fires its blast of orange light up at it. Unlike its previous battles with anyone since evolving, Charizard actually has to try here, putting everything it has into the attack just to hold Hyper Beam at bay, an utterly unacceptable resolution, but the only one it's gonna get, as neither it nor Primeape can break the stalemate, holding on until neither can maintain the move, and they are forced to disengage. Such strenuous attacking also drives Charizard into a landing so it can recover, a further indignity to stoke its ire, though, as it looks over at Primeape, it sees its rival sprawl down its back also exhausted. At least it didn't collapse from the effort, which surely means that when push came to shove, it's still the strongest, right? Unfortunately, there isn't time for another rematch to find out, as by now the gang are headed for Viridian City in Ash's last gym battle, though to their surprise when they enter the gym they discover none other than Jessie, James, and Meowth are the temporary gym leaders. To make matters worse, when Jessie and Ash make their way into the specialized trainer boxes, she reveals that she'll be using 3 Pokemon, none of which are her own, and all of which look to be incredibly powerful. Figuring the best way to fight power is with power, Ash calls for Primeape to come on out, and knowing this could be a problem, Jessie decides to fight dirty and have Marcham, Kingler, and Rhydon all rush in at once. Fiercely, Primeape does its best to hold this barrage off, though even it can't handle a 3-on-1, and to make matters worse, when Ash's Pokemon is hurt, his trainer box electrocutes him to simulate the pain the pig monkey is feeling. Letting out a cry, Ash drops to one knee, though caring more for Primeape's well-being than his own, he puts all his focus into calling in some reinforcements, as he tells Charizard and Bulbasaur to get in there. Entering the fray with matching roars, the pair of Cantonian starters set to work, as Bulbasaur forces Kingler back with Razor Leaf while Charizard barrels into Rhydon, proving that it can handle the draw Pokemon just as well as Primeape did back at the Cinnabar gym. This at last frees the fighting type up to get back in the action, and refusing to squander the chance, it leaps at Marcham, going blow for blow with it, despite the superpower Pokemon having an extra set of arms at its disposal. This causes Jessie to receive her own dose of shocks, though as one would expect from her, this only makes the magenta-haired woman turn nastier, as she has all 3 of her Pokemon break off from their individual battles, and dogpile Bulbasaur as the smallest of Ash's team. Unfortunately, despite all its grit, Bulbasaur simply cannot withstand almost 700 pounds of muscle, rock, and chitin being dropped on its head at once, so that when the trio of gym Pokemon clear the landing zone, they leave a very unconscious grass type in their wake. Recognizing that it's up to them now, Charizard and Primeape ready themselves for the 2v3, both prepared to put aside their differences like they did during the eruption, though also holding out little hope that their battle partner is prepared to do the same. In contrast, Jessie's team are all perfectly obedient to anyone under the Team Rocket banner, and figuring she shouldn't fix what ain't broke, she commands them to all target Charizard this time. However, unlike the decimation of Bulbasaur, only 2 of Jessie's 3 Pokemon tackle the Fire Lizard, those being Rhydon and Marcham, as they work in tandem to pin their foe with one holding Charizard's neck and wings down, while the other holds its feet and tail. At first, Ash is confused as to why Kingler didn't join in this time, though the answer becomes clear a moment later, when Jessie orders her King Crab to use Water Gun right on Charizard's trapped tail flame, intent on taking it out of this fight by any means necessary. Letting out a cry, Ash orders Primeape to intercept this, though in truth, the fighting type had already been in motion, diving across the field and catching the jet of water in its chest. In that moment, time seems to slow for Charizard, as the sound of Primeape's pained grunt fills its ears, mingled with Ash's own screams as he's electrocuted once more. Despite the fact that it has treated these 2 worse than anyone else, they are still suffering to protect it. This is true friendship. This is true strength. With this revelation, time resumes normally, and drawing on what it has learned, Charizard bucks off its two captors then takes to the sky, the beating of its mighty wings meant to instill fear in those who stand against it. However, even if it does not, what follows surely will, as opening its maw wide, it unleashes a torrent of flame that bathes the battlefield, consuming all three of the gym leader's Pokemon, while purposefully avoiding the now prone Primeape. While a small burst would surely be enough to achieve its objective, Charizard does not stop for a full minute, raising the temperature of the gym itself to such a level that Meowth frantically begs for someone to crank the AC or he'll bake in his fur. Then, when it is satisfied that it has conveyed its point, Charizard stops, letting the flames subside, and staring down into the ashes where Marchamp, Kingler and Rhydon all lie huddled and unconscious. Touching down with a fearsome glare at Team Rocket, Charizard watches as James shakily flicks Ash's final badge then bolts with his two compatriots close on his heels, evidently not wanting to be the next victims of the dragon's wrath. However, in truth Charizard has already lost interest in them, instead bending down to offer Primeape a hand up. Recognizing the olive branch for what it is, the pig monkey accepts, rising with its rival's help and giving it a respectful nod which the flame Pokemon returns in kind. Unfortunately, their cool moment is somewhat ruined when Ash tackle hugs them, blubbering happily that they're both so awesome and that he's so glad they're all friends again. From here, all that is left is to return to Pallet Town and get ready for the League. As usual, this means rigorous training for Primeape and its pals, who now include Charizard. As while the pair are still rivals, it is a more amiable rivalry. Thanks to Charizard also helping out in the sparring, the group's growth is considerable, especially for it and Primeape, as they are some of the only Pokemon who can really push the other to their limits and beyond. As a result, the duo quickly established themselves as Ash's undeniable ace Pokemon, so that when the boy gives out on little adventures, such as to find Elite Four Bruno's secret training ground, or to meet Professor Westwood the Fifth on Seafoam Island, Primeape and Charizard are always the first Pokemon he calls when he runs into trouble. Sagely, Brock warns that over-reliance on a single Pokemon or pair of Pokemon could lead to disastrous results, as it puts too much strain on them, while also hampering the growth of the rest of his team. Though, in his usual headstrong way, Ash dismisses this, as he's simply too overjoyed at having his two former problem children Pokemon not only listen to him, but also stand as his strongest team members, as surely, that must make him some sort of Pokemon training genius to have achieved this twice. Sardonically, Misty tells him that he better wake up and smell his own delusions fast, though unfortunately, this does not happen. At least, not in time for the Pokemon League, so that when he is slated to face Mandy on the waterfield, he swoops with Primeape instead of Krabby, who therefore remains unevolved. Likewise, rather than honing his tactical thinking against Jeanette Fisher with Muck, Ash simply has Charizard burn down the grass field and Bellsprout alike, advancing that way instead. Nonetheless, Ash sees no problem in this, as he has made it to the top 16, and easier than in canon. It is during this time that he meets and befriends Richie, with the brunette boy being particularly impressed with how strong some of Ash's team is, with this making him even more excited to battle him, and battle they do, as following a Team Rocket scheme to kidnap his Pokemon, Ash arrives at the arena to begin their match, going with Squirtle to start things off against Happy the Butterfree. As the water type is one of Primeape's long-standing battle buddies, here it is able to show off its own improved strength, dealing more damage than in canon, though unfortunately, it still falls victim to Happy's sleep powder, and as per the rules of the Indigo League, is disqualified. Thankfully, here Pikachu steps up to the plate, taking down Happy and tying rather than losing to Zippo, so that as Ash and Richie bring out their last Pokemon, it is Charizard and a Pikachu named Sparky. However, unlike in the main timeline, this is not the gamble it would be for Ash, as when he says Flamethrower, Charizard does it, scorching Sparky and ending the match summarily in his favour. And just like that, Ash is in the top 8, where he is set to face Assunta for the right to advance to the semi-finals, though unfortunately, that will not be happening, as it is here that Ash's Pidgeys come home to roost, since with both Charizard and Primeape being exhausted from overuse, they both fall relatively early into the match, and while some of Ash's Pokemon are stronger from their training with the pair, others are weaker, meaning that when it hits crunch time, Ash's lopsided squad is simply not up to snuff, and Assunta is the one to move on. Naturally, the young man is rather disheartened by his loss, as he had let success go to his head, though recognizing that now, he is ready to learn from his failure and move on. However, when he returns home, he learns that not everyone considers what he did to be failure, as waiting for him at Oak's Lab is a massive party to celebrate his achievement in making it all the way to the quarterfinals, so that at least for today, Ash and his Pokemon are the toast of Pallet Town. And that's where we'll leave things. What further changes will Primeape's presence cause to Ash's adventures? How will it affect his travels to the Orange Islands and beyond? And does it have what it takes to make Ash the very best like no one ever was? Find out as the journey continues.